All right. We're broadcasting a different way now. And we're back. And it's COMP228, Lesson 6, Part 2. And we're doing the broadcast and recording at the same time. And where last we left off, I said, hey, I'm downloading this download for Eclipse. I'm just going to kind of unzip it here. I have my Eclipse download right here in my downloads. I'm going to double click this thing, and now it's going to pull up a second version of Eclipse running at kind of next to my other Eclipse. Look, they're both running here on my Mac, right? Now it's looking to see where my workspace is going to be is being used, and I want to point my workspace to my old workspace, which is my COMP228 workspace. Otherwise, I'm not going to see anything in there, right? So I'm going to browse. I'm going to go to courses where I have my stuff, COMP228, workspace, and press open. Now, when I've done that, it's going to try to import. It says workspace, was written with an older version of the product and will be updated. Updating the workspace can make it incompatible with older versions of the product. Are you sure you want to continue? Am I sure? No. If I do this right now without closing off my workspace and everything else, this would be bad, right? So let me cancel for a second. I don't have to do this. I don't even have to open and get Eclipse. I'm going to install this Eclipse by deleting my old one. That's how confident I am that I can get this done for you guys, right? And then you might think I'm crazy. And I am. I'm a little nuts. But hey. So here's Eclipse. And if you notice, the Eclipse also has a bunch of other stuff in here. Whereas the one I just downloaded, right, I don't see all that extra stuff. Right? I don't see it. I just see this, just this whole package right here. So that's one difference that I see right away. Right? I only see Eclipse having just this Eclipse folder, which is new for Windows, for Mac. So I'm just going to go here and push it into Windows or my application folder. And now if you notice there's two. There's Eclipse, my old folder, and Eclipse, my new folder. I'm going to close off the version of Eclipse I'm using right now because that would be bad and destructive if I had this on still because it would mess this up. I don't want to mess this up. So I'm closing it off. Good. And now I'm going to open up my new version. Here it is. Mars. Now I'm going to repoint my folder, and I'm not going to care if it destroys my other stuff because, hey, who cares? Right? I'll fix it. Worst case scenario. And you shouldn't worry either, all right? It's not a big deal. Once you have your workspace, pointing to my workspace, and I press OK, it's going to say, hey, it's with an older version of thing. Do you want to update? I'm going to press OK. It's going to give me the warning. I'm going to press OK. It's going to update the workspace, and it's going to basically pull in all my files that I had before. Take a look. Without anything extra, I didn't do anything. I have two things. It recognizes the fact that it has, these are Git repositories, right? Number one, by downloading the latest version of Eclipse. I also have in here only swing, right? I don't have AWT. That's one thing that's different, right? So I can do JFrame, Jpanel, dialogues, and so on. And there's also swing automatic data binding, right? Some other stuff. It doesn't have AWT components, right? So let's go into my preferences here. And if I look at Window Builder, right? If I open this up, I can see that I have swing, but I don't have AWT. Okay? That's what you should have if you've downloaded it fresh. So, and also, do I have, my other question to you is, when I go to Java, there's all the things I got to reconfigure, like before. When we reconfigure the compiler, right? My compiler is defaulting to 1.8. That's the compiler compliance level that I'm looking at, right? These are all the things that you would have had to do before. Why do I not care about my files? Because I can always get them back from GitHub. That's why. I got a backup. So worst case, if I mess up things with my workspace, I can get them back, right? Let's cancel here. And let's try and run this project, right? Because I have my project in my source files, in my default package. I have my program.java class, which is open right now. Let's press play to see if it runs. And yeah, it does, right? So everything runs as normal. Here's the other thing. If I go into my example frame, I should be able to still design everything, right? Here's my design. it should be able to pull into my design, and I should be able to see this design package. So the only thing I had to do to get this back, right, I still have my Java perspective, was download the latest version of Eclipse Mars and repoint my Eclipse at my workspace. That's all I've done. I haven't got anything extra. Let's add some extras, like egit. How do I do that for those people who forgot? So first I got to search for this plugin, right? So I'm going to say egit, and it's egit Eclipse. I want to make it the same, right? So I'm going to go download the distribution, right? If you look at the project, it also tells you the Git version control system, blah, blah. By the way, I probably already have this thing, but let's just add it anyway. All right, so it says, here's the main update site, which is download Eclipse egit updates. That's the one I want to use. So I'm going to take this, where it says the main update site, copy it, go back to Eclipse, right, that I have running now, and I want to go to help, and I want to go to where it says install new software, right? And I'm going to populate this by clicking add and my path and call this egit, right? That's all I've done. So I've got add, my path, egit. Just make sure that there's no extra bracket, because that would be bad. And press OK. Now it's going to find egit, and look, it has egit team provider for JGit, experimental features. Why not? We'll add them all in. Right? And press next. If it's going to fail, it's going to tell me, it's going to fail, right? Next, accept, finish. Now it's going to add in egit into my Eclipse, because my Eclipse, good thing about Eclipse, like a lot of other IDEs, is it's modular, right? You can add or remove components as you see fit, right? So you can, if you don't have a component, if you're using Eclipse EE, and you want to have egit, you can certainly do that. If you want to add window builder, which we're going to do in a second, I'm going to add it again, right? Let's see how it messes me up. Does it mess me up or not? And this is important to get your IDE straight, because if your IDE is not working right, I'm going to do something up here and you're not going to be able to do it. You're going to be frustrated. I don't want that. We want to get rid of the tool issues we have and get right into actually programming, right? So as you can tell, this is taking quite a bit of time. Warning. You have installed software that contains unsigned content. Do you want to continue? Yes, I do. Don't ask me again. Because I trust everything from Eclipse and everything from egit. Okay, good. You will need to restart your Eclipse for it to take effect. Would you like to? Yes. So I restart Eclipse. Eclipse Mars comes back up. And I press OK for my workspace, the same workspace. And let me don't ask this question anymore, right? Because I don't want you to ask me that crazy workspace question. It's the same workspace. Not going to change. Okay, cool. So I've got that down. There's no issues here. So so far we have the same the things that I have. Okay, let's go back into that window builder thing that I looked at last time, right? I'll kill this one, and what's this one? I don't need that one. And some questions about Windows Builder. I don't need that one, or the Eclipse platform. Let me just look up Windows Builder here. So I'm going to say install Windows Builder. Window Builder, sorry. Window Builder Eclipse Mars, right? How do I install it? Right? Hi all, I've Eclipse Mars and I can't understand how to install Windows Builder. I go to help, install new software, and I try and put this in. Then I go to general purpose tools, and the problem is that something is missing. Okay. And it says, sorry, I resolved everything. Okay, so that's cool. So I don't care what he did. But if you notice, help download eclipse.org releases Mars is where he's gone to, and he's trying to find SWT Designer and Core and Window Builder Core and all this kind of stuff. So that's his question. So Window Builder Pro, I have these links. Here's my update sites. Remember we talked about updates? Here's Windows Mars or Eclipse Mars. There's different ones. There's the zipped update site. I don't want this one. There's the integration site. I don't want that one. Or the zipped update site. I don't want that one. I want this link. If I click on this link, I get this link up top here. This is the link, right? It doesn't take me anywhere because this is a repository site that only is accessible through Eclipse. So I need to take this. I need to take this link, copy it. I need to go back to Eclipse the way we did it before. I'm going to go back to help, right? I'm going to go back to install new software. And then when I do that, add, kill this location and add that in, paste, right? And then I'm going to give it a friendly name like window builder. If I've done this correctly, I press OK, and it comes up with a bunch of stuff. Not only does it have Swing Designer, but also SWT Designer and Window Builder Engine that's required, right? Well, I have all these things, but let's add them in anyway, just to see I want them all. And press Next. It's going to ask me for permission. I'm going to say, yes, these are the tools I want. Next. I'm going to click Accept and Finish. Now it's going to install my software nicely. And I should have everything I had before, right, before I installed this crazy stuff. One thing I don't have right in here in Eclipse that I used to have is the ability to do Android application programming, but who cares, because I'm going to be using the latest version of Android Studio for Android programming. Yes?
So which link did you choose just now?
I went to, thank you for that, I went to this link, 4.5, because Mars is what I'm using. I'm clicking on it. If I can click on it, or I can do this. Right-click, copy link address. That's also what you can do instead of going, right? You can go both. They're the same, right? I want to copy this link and then go into Eclipse and install it as software, right? So I'm going to wait till this resolves so you can have the latest tools. So here's a question, and I got this from students in the past when I've taught Java, right? Do I need Window Builder for the course? The answer is no. You don't need it, but it makes it a lot easier, right? Because we're going to get to doing Windows later on, and it's good for testing, right? So here's my Eclipse Mars. Let's see the differences that I got now. Remember, I only had Swing available to me last time, right? By default. All right. Yeah. Who cares about this? But now, if I click here, I got Swing, SWT, JFace, RCP, Eclipse 4, Forms, Data Binding, XWT, all kinds of extra stuff that I didn't have before. This is what you should see now if you follow my steps. Okay? Please do this to make it easier for yourself. Okay. Now, are we on the same page finally? Well, now I'm going to tell you you don't need it. I'm going to tell you this because that's how it is, right? All right, let's get to this thing. So all we've done here is create something called a content panel in my example frame application, right? And the example frame application is, or class, if you will, is a class that's inheriting the JFrame superclass. But what if, I'm going to put it out there to you, right? What if I just want to do this all in my driver? Do I need a class? That's my question for you. Remember the question that I just asked. Do I need a class, right? How do I get this done without using a class? Well, remember, when I extend a superclass like JFrame, now example frame is a relationship with the JFrame, which means example frame is a JFrame effectively, which means it has all the default methods, set default, set bounds, set content pane, all these default methods that come from the JFrame method are included. Now, what if I don't want to do that? What if I want to do it the way that you might be thinking about doing it? Tom, this is so complicated. I need to make a class, and I have to instantiate an object of the class to make a window. Wow, that's a lot of work. Yes, that is a lot of work, but you could do it this way too. Now, look at the imports I have. I have Java Awt Borderlayout, Event Queue, which I'm not using right now, Swing, JFrame, and Jpanel, and Border, empty border. So what if I don't? About my program.java. And I don't want to use this anymore. So I'm killing this thing. Okay. One thing I don't like is whenever I switch preferences, my Eclipse gives me, the text here is quite small. So I'm just going to go into, just because we're teaching with this one, right? I'm going to go into Preferences, and I'm going to go into Java Editor. And I'm going to click on text editors for a second. And in here, I'm also going to choose that there's different options for my editor in terms of the way it's looking and everything else, the look and feel. For example, my colors and fonts. I don't want my colors and fonts to be so small. So where you see normally that Monaco 14 is the font that I'm using for my text font, right? Well, this is cool and all, but 14 might be a little bit too small from what we're doing. I'm going to make it a little bigger because, I want you guys to be able to see what I'm doing. So I'm going to click Edit. And over here, instead of 14, I'm going to make it the 16. I'm just going to dial that in. You can do whatever you like for yourself. I'm just going to make it 16. Good. Escape from this. Press Apply. Press OK. Now you're going to see the font a little bit bigger. Okay, so I want to make a JFrame. I know it's the JFrame class, and I want to call it example frame or something like that. Let's call it my frame, right? So let's do that. So how do I do this? I'm going to say, well, normally what we do is expect you to do is do one of these, right? JFrame. And if you notice, if you don't know what it is, by the way, you can see over here is JFrame with capital J, capital F. JFrame, and look at the error that's not going to go away. Well, just wait for it. My frame is equal to a new JFrame. Right? If I save, and I'm getting at these errors. And if you notice, when I hover over, it says the JFrame cannot be resolved. And if I click down here for quick fixes, it says import JFrame from the javax.swing, which is what I want to do. So I click onto that. Boom, I have the ability to add a JFrame now. So my frame then is a JFrame. Okay, now I'm getting errors. Look at there's errors that are coming up here. That's what's gone now. Now the next thing I want to do is just like we did with the JFrame, I want to add a Jpanel, right? So let's do it here. We're going to call it my panel, right? Just to keep the same. So Jpanel, we're going to call it my panel, which is a new object of type Jpanel. Oh, there's some issues here, but let's just do this. Save. If I hover over, it says, hey, import the Jpanel javax.swing class. And boom, I got those two classes in there. Okay, cool. So I got this piece done, right? Instead of content panel, we call it my Jpanel, right? My panel. It's the only difference that I've got so far. So this is my content panel, and these are part of my program, which makes them. If you notice, I'm not using any access modifiers here because it's inside my static method main, right? So I don't need modifiers here. Okay, now here's the stuff I need to do. I need to do this content panel, right, which is my Jpanel, is equal to a new Jpanel, right? I've already done that piece. This piece is done. And then there's also this piece, set default close operation, and set bounds. All this stuff has to be done. But how do I get this stuff so that it works with this? Because what I'm doing here, set default close operation, is part of the JFrame superclass, right? I want to use these methods, right, that are built in. Well, let me just copy them. Let's copy these two methods. So I'm lazy, right? Go over here. And I want to put them in. Well, it's not going to understand what these things are. In the beginning, it says, hey, what are you talking about? There is no method set default close operation. Where does this set default close operation go? JFrame, my frame. So I'm going to put my frame dot set default operation close operation to here. I'm going to do the same thing to set bounds. My frame dot set bounds. I'm setting the bounds of my frame. And again, if you notice what it does, if I hover over it, it says my x and y coordinates and my width and my height. So this is my x and y coordinates where my JFrame is going to be created. 100 across and 100 down from the top left corner of the screen, right? And then it's going to be 450 pixels wide by 300 pixels high. That's what this is. So those are the two things I've done, right? For my JFrame. I'm setting up my JFrame. I haven't instantiated it yet. Let's be careful here, right? Okay, cool. Next piece. I have to set up my content panel of my panel, right? My new panel, which is it's called here. It's called content panel. For me, it's called my panel, right? So let's just get these two things in here and replace the text, so I can show you what I'm talking about. Same operations, but there is no this content panel. We can't use this keyword in a static class, right? But I can use my panel, which is what I'm doing here, to replace content panel. So just replace that and replace this, and you see the errors go away. Now what is this doing? It's saying, well, create a new empty border, right? and create a new, I'm going to use my set layout method of my panel, because remember, set border and set layout come from the Jpanel superclass. They're built in as methods. Now that I've set my panel as an object of the Jpanel superclass, it has access to those two methods, set border and set layout. Okay. Look what happens automatically when I did this. It automatically installed java.awt border layout. And by the way, we're going to learn that AWT is a lower level GUI accessor, right? And it also added something of swing border, empty border, right? To my panel. So I've defined my borders, what they're going to look like, and the border layout. Okay, we're going to talk about these later on. And I've set up my border, whatever my border for my Jpanel is, and my layout. That's what I'm doing here. Cool, so I've done those. Now the next one is, I'm going to use the set content pane method to point to my panel. So let's just grab this, and go back here, and go in here, and put that in. Well, this set content pane doesn't exist, and I can't use this keyword, so I got to do this all again. So I'm accessing my frame. So I'm going to say my frame then is equal to my panel. So set content pane as my panel, right? So why? Let me split this off so you guys can see this. So this sets up my objects. This defines some properties of the frame object that holds the panel. This defines properties of the panel that's inside of my object, my frame. This assigns the panel as a child, right, to my frame, right? That's what it does. So my panel now is attached to my frame as a child object. And we're using the set content pane method to do that. When I say a child object, in the hierarchy, if you think about these different GUI objects as containers, the outer container for my GUI, right, is my JFrame. An inner container is my JPanel. And there's going to be other containers that I'm going to use to associate my layout and so on. Those are two things. I'm not done yet. All right, cool. So I've got all this thing happening. But remember, I have to use my set visible true to my frame. Otherwise, it's not going to show up. So I'm going to go back to my program, and I'm going to say my frame. And if you don't know what the command is, let's try this out. My frame dot, and if I click set, you notice that set visible is 82% used. Set visible, and it's a true or false. It tells you what it is. I'm going to set it as true to make it available, right? So this is without any example frame class. I'm just going to close this class off for a second. Oop, that's not what I wanted. I don't know how that did that. Let's get back to Java. Let's get back to Eclipse. Don't know how that closed off. But that's okay. That was bizarre. Close one thing, close it all. Yay! Okay. I said I want to get rid of that, not this. Don't know how that happened. All right, let's save all. So I'm going to go File, make sure that I didn't need to save nothing. There it is. So, I mean, even though I have my example files, I'm going to go back into my lesson 6. I still do have this in my default package. I still do have my example frame class I created in my default package, but I'm not using it anymore. Yeah, see? Enable. Yeah, we don't care. It was an error that was caused somehow. Okay, so let's run this thing, see if it works. I've done all this work with you, and I've talked a big game. Now let's like put my money where my mouth is and show you that it works out, right? I'm not lying to you. Yay! It's the exact same thing. Here's the disadvantage to what I just did. Do you see on the bottom any panel, any kind of tab that allows me to do any kind of design work here? No. This is manual, right? It's manual. You can't put it in, right? How can it know that what I'm trying to do here with my main class, my main example frame? What's the difference between the two classes, by the way? Let me take a look. Example frame is it's just a class. So that's one thing I've done, right? I've made a class, example frame. My program Java class is a driver class. That's all it is, right? But what's missing from it? It has the exact same imports, right? One is it extends JFrame. The other one doesn't. We still want to do this exit on close operation. If we don't do this exit on close, if we're not explicit, so we've done it already here, exit on close. If I take this away, so let's just, comment it out for a second. I want to show you what each one of these things do, right? So you're clear. So I'm going to save this thing, and I'm going to kind of power it on, right? Let's power the frame up. Now I'm going to close click the close button, right? Guess what? It's still running. On the bottom, I still have something of a piece that's running. There's a piece of it that's running. The only way I can stop it is to click this stop button over here. Now it goes away, right? So this piece here tells me when I click the close button to close off my window. If I don't have this piece, jframe.exit on close, it won't close. They'll stay forever open until you close up your operating system or until you explicitly close it by right-clicking and closing, right? The Java piece. Okay, let's fool around with these things. I love fooling around when I do this stuff, eh? So one thing is we've set this up, and the other one is fooling around, all right? So, hey, look, my set bounds is 100, 100, right? So x and y coordinates. Let's put it at 300 by 300. Right, 300 by 300. Let's see where that goes. And yours might be up here somewhere else. Let's try this out. Boom. Hey, it's over here now, right? It was over here like before, right? Okay, cool. Let's check my window. Let's make my window like 600 wide, all right? And then press play. Whoa, it's 600 wide now. It should be. Okay, let's check out let's make it square. Let's make it 600 tall. Right, let's check this out. Bam, it's 600 tall and 600 wide in a big square, right? So I can change the size of my window by changing these little properties here, right? That's what I'm doing, okay? I'm also using my new empty border, right? Now there's other borders I can use we'll go into later. How about this one, border layout? It says, if I click over it says, or if I hover over it says, constructs a border layout with the specified gaps between components. The horizontal gap is specified by H-gap, and the vertical gap is specified by V-gap. So this is H-gap, this is V-gap. So there's no spacing inside of our components in my layout. I'm using border layout, right? Okay, cool. Here's the next one. If I hover over empty border, it says, creates an empty border with the specified insets, right? So it says, top is the top inset of the border, left, bottom, and right. And they're all integer types, right? That's why it's 5555. So what does empty border do? That's what it does, right? Content pane, if I hover over that, it says, sets the content pane property. The method is called by the constructor. So basically what I'm doing is when I set the content pane to my panel, I'm saying, take my panel and associate it with my frame. That's what I'm doing, right? And now if I set visible to false, right? Like right now it's set to true. If I set this thing to false, hell, if I leave it out, let me just leave it out. So I'm going to kind of do one of these and just comment it out. Boop, boop. Comment. Let's see what happens now if I run this thing. What's going on? And nothing happened, right? It didn't. If I don't set my visibility to true for my frame, it doesn't appear. In fact, it shuts down for me. So we need to turn this. This is a requirement for our frame. So whenever we make a window, set visible as true is required. Any questions up to this point? So we've kind of learned about two components, right? The JFrame, which is our outer container, and the Jpanel, which is our inner container. One contained within the other one, right? Those are like kind of key features. Now, how do I display stuff, right? Because I want to display some stuff like a label, maybe some kind of text. What are they? What are these things that I can use, right? Well, I take you back to this stuff, right? If I go back to my, this is why the window builder tool is such a cool tool for learning, right? So let's go back to my example frame that I use, right? Example frame, the great thing about it is it's using a class, right? And there's some really good things here. I've designed my example frame itself because it extends the JFrame class, and it includes a Jpanel as a private property, right? Which we called content panel here, right? When I instantiate an object of this type, right? And again, it's using the empty constructor example frame, empty constructor, the constructor calls all this stuff, right? Content pane, panel, and everything else. If I want to really be slick about it, right, I could create some kind of initialization or something initialize method that calls all this stuff, and all I'm calling is that inside my example frame constructor. Why would I want to do that? Well, there's a couple of reasons. One is I don't want to clutter my constructor with a bunch of commands. What if I have more than one constructor signature, right? I don't want to do this again, right? So that's why it might be a good idea to create another method, a utility method called initialize, that I can call, that's private, that I can call from within my constructor. So how do I do that quick and dirty with Eclipse? I can right-click after I've highlighted everything, right? I'm going to go to source, right? And if you notice, it says here that I want to be able to create, if you will, I'm not sure if it's here or if it's somewhere else, but what I want to do is, maybe it's under refactor. Yeah, refactor. I want to extract my method. That's what I want to do, right? From refactor. So I want to make my new method name, right? It says, right now my default is extracted. I want to give this thing, it's going to be a private method, right? And I want to call this thing something, my method name. I'm probably going to call this underscore initialize. And let me see what it does to our funny stuff that we get. So here's my underscore initialize, press OK. And now, bam, it kind of moves all this stuff into the initialize method, this private method. Let's make this a header with private methods. Private methods. Initialize. This is my initialize utility method, right? And I'm going to use this keyword for that, right? So this dot initialize. So basically what it's going to do is it's going to initialize all my information here. Now, good thing is when I click on design, if I've done everything correctly and if I haven't messed up this stuff, my design tab will function. The design tab works with XML. What it does, in the background, Java takes a look and analyzes my class, and it says if this conforms with the way I need to see it, my design panel will work. Otherwise, it won't. Let's check this out. Design. See what it just did? Let me go back. Source. Design. Okay, now it worked, right? I didn't make a change. Because I didn't make a change, everything works as normal. It shows me a preview, that's what it is, of my panel here. This is what my panel looks like. If you notice, I can look at my panel, I can click into my panel, right? But I want to add in some other things. If you notice here on the left, from a learning perspective, this is something that's really cool. Look, I've got containers, a Jpanel, a JSplit panel, a JToolbar, a JDesktop, a JScroll panel, a JTab panel, all kinds of other things that you can add in as a layout tool or container. I also have some other layouts. I have border layout, which is what we've used so far, right? And if you notice over here, my layout, that's part of my panel, look at this little properties tool that I'm getting here, right? It's showing me my H gap and my V gap like we showed before, right? And all kinds of additional information, right? And also my class, my border is an empty border, right? But I've actually created an anonymous object, right, to create this thing. Let's change that up. Let's go back to source. So you may not be comfortable doing this. New empty border, blah, 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 right? Maybe what we need to do is create up here some kind of private instance variable that we call empty border, and a new private instance variable that we call border layout. Okay, we might think of this as well. Let's break it out a little bit more, make it more complex, right? So or maybe simple for some people. Private. I'm going to call this thing empty border. It's going to be of type empty border, right? And I'm going to make a new object of empty border called lowercase empty border. Or maybe I'll call it my empty border here. My empty border. This is inside my example frame class. Okay, cool. So my empty border is there. I haven't instantiated this border yet. I'm doing it here, right? I'm instantiating my border here, but I don't really want to do that. I want to do that somewhere else, maybe up here in my initialize function. Okay. So I got my border layout, my empty border. Now I want to do my border layout. Okay, so there's another method, private. Let's say border layout, right? And we'll call this my border layout. You can call it whatever you like. Makes sense to you? Now they're just references to objects, but they haven't been created. These are just references. And if you notice, they glow yellow, and there's a little sign in here in Java that says, hey, if you look at here, it's a warning. It's not an error. It's a warning that this my empty border and my border layout, they haven't been used. So let's use them. So I'm going to go into my initialize method, and before I do anything else, at the top of my initialize method, I'm going to say this. I'm going to say this dot, and they're private. Oh man, I named them wrong. So this dot underscore my empty border, right, is equal to, and I'm not going to type it, I'm just going to grab it from here. Take a look. So grab this one and put it here. All right. And in here, in my set border, I'm going to say this dot underscore my empty border. Right? All I'm doing is breaking it out for you so you understand even more. Right? That's what I'm trying to do. And again, I'm going to do the same thing for border layout. I'm going to say this dot underscore my border layout is equal to, and I'm going to take this stuff in here, because these are objects that have been instantiated as, and I'm going to say this again, anonymous objects. They don't have a name attached to them. Well, not until now. Now they do. Okay, cool. So if you notice now, I'm just going to pull this down a little bit. I have a couple of additional private properties, right? Private instance variables. My empty border and border layout that I'm using here in my initialize method, right? And the initialize method is declaring these two objects, my empty border and my border layout, as objects that I'm feeding into the set border method of the content panel object, right? Because content panel, this is a great example of composition, right? Class composition. You getting an error? Everything good? Now let's see if my design layout understands my changes. Okay, I'm going to kind of save everything here. And I'm going to go to my design tab and see if it understands what I just did. Watch carefully for what it's doing. So what it does, and if you saw that reading in, it tries to read my class again to understand if it knows how to display my object here. Okay? But here's the changes. Take a look at here. My variable now for my layout, as an example, is my border layout. Before it was just an anonymous variable, right? Anonymous object. On the right, you can see in the outliner how it's created. I have my content panel, which is a private object, and take a look at all my private properties. Just going to show you this on the right. On my outliner, it shows you the red dot, or the red square here, indicates that all of these things are private, right? So in my example frame, I have my content panel, which is private, my empty border, which is private, and these are all instance variables, and my border layout, which is private, plus I have a private method, that's the difference between methods and everything else that's in here, called initialize. If it was public, it would have a different color and a different symbol. Just understand the outliner here. Okay, so we've got this thing. And we've named these things. Did I have to name them? No. I could have used them as anonymous objects. But for some people, it's hard to wrap their minds around creating an anonymous object. So I've taken that anonymity away and attached a name to them. That's all I've done by doing this, by doing these things. I've just attached two names, empty border and border layout, and that's all. But the effect is exactly the same. There's no difference. I'm just passing in a named object as opposed to an anonymous object, which is just this piece before. I know this might be, you can understand, most of you will be able to understand this, but there might be some person out there, right, in this group that doesn't get anonymous objects. Again, I'm just going to name it again. Anonymous objects are just objects without a name. I can use the new keyword to create an object without naming it, right? The name of the object helps us to reuse it. Sometimes, though, if the object's never going to be reused, it doesn't make any sense as developers to create an object name for it, right? because we're never going to reuse it, and it's going to take extra memory. So if you're thinking about from a memory concern perspective, it may not be the best option for you. You may want to use anonymous objects. For clarity, however, from a clarity perspective, this is a little bit more clear for some of you than anonymous objects. Okay? I'm just pointing them out. In the book, it'll show it both ways. Let me see the effect of this if I run this class here, my example frame class before. Remember, I'm not doing it in here, right? I've just goofed around in here to show you that I don't have to use a class. But what are the disadvantages? The disadvantages are I don't have a design element. I can't drag and drop anything. Whereas in here, let me show you how I can drag and drop. If I go back to design really quickly before we end for the day, or for the top of the day, I want to add in another component. If you notice under components, by the way, you can hide these components. If you click on them, containers, and I have a set of components here. I want to drag in a label. Let's drag this in. So you'd be forgiven to think that I can just do one of these. That's not going to work. That works in Windows if I do this. That's not how it works. You have to click on the label first, activate it, and then click inside the window. If I hover over, you can see that I have different positions by default that I can put this in. And if you notice, they have different names: north, south, east, or west and east, and then center. I'm going to put it on the top left so that it's inside the northern part of my layout. I click onto it, and now I have a new label with a new label object, right? Guess what? This new label, I've dragged and dropped it inside my Jpanel. How does this equate? How the hell does this equate in code, right? Because I haven't coded a darn thing, right? Just drag and drop. Let's take a look. Here's my source code now, and whoa, here's my J label, right? Which is a new J label, new label. Well, label new label is what they've called it, which is of type new J label. Well, that's not how I want it. That's neat and all, right? But that's not how I want it. I want to make my labels private instance variables, right? So let's do that. Let's fix this up. So I'm going to take this whole thing, and I'm going to cut it out. Actually, I'll leave part of it down here. I'll leave this label, new label down here. I'm going to copy it and paste it. So here's my J label. Make it private up here. Then we'll end for the day. And instead of label, new label, I'm going to call this, first name label, which makes more sense. Underscore first name label, right? Which is of type new J label, right? We're going to kill this piece for a second. I'm just defining it up here first. And this first name label, I'm going to use down here, right? Take a look, by doing one of these. Say this dot underscore first name label is equal to a new J label. That's going to say new label, but instead of new label, the label name, the string in here, is going to say something like first name. Right? That's the string. That's the string, that's the text that's going to be associated with the label. And now I want to add it to the content pane. This is how I do it. This dot content panel add, and then what am I adding? I'm adding this dot underscore first name label, right? In the border layout of north. Okay, now let's see if I click on design, does it accept my changes? So I made some changes to the design. And yes, it does. Here's my first name label. It accepts it. Now, if I want to show this, I can't use this anymore in my program driver class. I'm going to do the same thing I did last time, right? Which is, I'm going to instantiate a new object of example frame. So I'm going to say example frame, new object of example frame. We'll make it my frame. Is equal a new example frame object, right? And then I'm also going to say my frame dot set visible, right, to true. Back to what we had before. And I'm going to update GitHub in a second so you get all my changes, right? If I've done everything correctly and if I haven't messed up, if I press play, I get my lovely new frame with a label that says first name. We going on the same page now? All right. Let's meet tonight and we'll talk the rest of this crazy GUI stuff. All right, well, not the rest, but a nice beginning. Yes? I will do both. I will do a broadcast, and I'll also be physically here. Okay? Thank you for that question. All right, let's kill this one, and I'm going to stop broadcasting and update GitHub. Guys, see you tonight. For those people, or you can stay home and see the broadcast, I'll also update my recording, right? Thanks a lot.